So to make a long story short, my wife and I have an unconventional sex life and our teenage son found one of our sex tapes while using my laptop without permission. He has his own computer so I don't know why he was on mine. My wife and I were sitting at the table going through some bill payments on her laptop and my daughter, 15, was on her laptop in the living room which is attached to the kitchen. My son stormed down the stairs and into the kitchen where he proceeded to start yelling at us over how sick we are. We had no idea what was happening and our daughter got mad and asked what was going on and he started yelling about what he found. This set my daughter off and my wife became hysterical and everyone began screaming at each other. I was so shocked and embarrassed by what was happening that I just remained quiet at first, but I put an end to the fighting and told everyone to split up and cool off, which they did. I told my wife we should talk about this with them, but she said she cannot possibly face them over how mortified she is. I went to try and say something anyway, but my kids were having none of it and wouldn't even look at me. Since then our kids have barely communicated with us and are not coming out of their rooms except for school and extracurriculars. We are making dinners which are being eaten in silence and in different rooms. It has been almost a week and I feel like I need to do something, but my wife keeps begging me not to bring it up and my children won't even look at me. What should I do? Update 1. It wouldn't let me post this earlier this morning, so I'm posting it now during lunch. In my last post I got great advice and some laughably terrible advice, but I followed some of the former to initially good effect. After some back and forth with the wife I put my foot down and decided we were going to have a sit down as a family and talk this out. She was quite upset, but I told her this would be best. I texted everyone in the morning, I start work early, to let them know to come home on time today because we need to clear the air and have a proper adult discussion, not disappearing into bedrooms. My daughter agreed and so did my son, although he had the condition that it not be in the living room, which was fine. Everyone did as I asked and we held the family meeting in the kitchen. It started off quite awkward and I began by reminding them the importance of respecting people's privacy. I told them that no one is in trouble, but I was very disappointed at my son's actions and said how he could have handled what happened with more discretion. My kids did not like this initially and they said some disrespectful things, but I reprimanded them for it and overall it was tense but calm as it could be under the circumstances. I went on and essentially explained to them that consenting adults, especially those who are married and happy together, shouldn't be shamed for whatever they have decided they enjoy. It is unfair to judge someone else and they need to learn as they grow older that not everyone will adhere to what they think is normal. They can dislike something personally, but it is wrong to hate someone else because of it. This is when it started to go south. My son started to get angry, but not just at us but also his sister. She apparently told her best friend, who is also her cousin, who then told people at school. Apparently my son has been getting made fun of at school because of it and he is obviously very upset. My wife became enraged at our daughter and quite hysterical and I actually removed her from the situation, not physically but told her to leave and cool off. I was upset too, but shouting wouldn't solve anything. I told my daughter that she was in deep trouble for doing that and asked my son if he had told anyone and he said no, which I believe. I took my daughter's phone and laptop as punishment and grounded her for until the end of the school year, but that is really just plugging a hole in the hull while the ship is on fire. She stormed off up to her room, which is where she will stay. I asked my son why he didn't mention anything to me about the bullying and he told me it was my fault and he didn't want to talk to me at all. I asked what they were saying but he wouldn't go into detail, just that they would call him names and throw things at him, fruit apparently. His friends were sticking up for him though, which I was happy to hear. He then said some very disrespectful things about me and his mother, which I understood because he was angry but I couldn't excuse, so I also took his electronics off him and grounded him. He still blamed me for the tape but I told him he wasn't in trouble for finding it, he was in trouble for being a disrespectful little shit. He stormed off to his room, which is where he too will stay for a while. I went upstairs to my wife and she was obviously extremely upset. I held her and she cried for a while and blamed herself before she eventually calmed down enough to talk. She realized that if the cousin knew, then my sister and her husband probably knew too. She was sobbing at the thought of them spreading this to our family, religious types, and we decided to try and get ahead of this. I texted my sister asking her if she was free this weekend to stop by for coffee or something. She didn't reply immediately, though I know she saw the text, and eventually she responded saying that she rather wouldn't right now. So now my wife is depressed, saying that my family are going to hate her and shun us and we would lose our community presence. I feel like I need to talk to my sister just to make sure what she knows and ask her to keep it to herself, even if I invite myself over. Does that seem like a good idea? Should I also talk to the school about my son and see if I can help at all? My daughter didn't mention any bullying, but she might be taking heat for this too. Also, we deleted all the adult stuff we had on the laptops and then I spent a good hour or so figuring out how to encrypt files, although my wife told me not to bother because it would never happen again. I'm also looking at family therapy because I want us to go and talk to a professional about it. Update 2. So I wasn't going to post anything more, especially after the reception my last posts received, but it's very early and I'm not doing anything for a while yet, so I decided to let everyone know how it all turned out. Sorry to disappoint, but I haven't killed myself, my children don't hate me, and my life isn't in ruins. So for those of you who told me to neck myself and everyone who decided that my relationship with my children was ruined forever, I sincerely pity how terrible a relationship you had with your parents and hope you never breed. Anyways, my last post yielded little advice and consisted mostly of people telling me how fucked everything was. Shout out to you /Saberina for actually giving some advice, so I decided to just ignore you all and do what I thought was best. I went to see my sister on Saturday morning and when I arrived she seemed surprised to see me but invited me anyway. She explained that her shortness over text was because she was dealing with her own problems with her/my children. She told me that cousin was being bullied by my daughter at school for no reason. I realized it must be about her blabbing about the tape, so I explained the situation. Leaving out the contents of the tape obviously cause I'm not stupid. She decided to punish her daughter for being disrespectful of someone indulging sensitive information, and we agreed that I would talk to my daughter about how wrong her behavior had been. Yes, she is religious, but she isn't insane and she doesn't judge me. I decided to let my kids stew without their electronics until Sunday while I helped my wife pull herself out of her shame spiral. After a long day of helping and supporting her, she seemed to snap out of it and slept peacefully for the first time since this all happened, which I was very grateful for. On Sunday we decided as a team to sit down with our kids and talk to them again. We started without our daughter as she seemed easier to deal with. We sat her down and I explained to her that what she did was similar to me reading her diary and then telling other people what was written in it. There's nothing wrong with having a diary and there's certainly nothing wrong with what was written in it, but it is embarrassing to have others know. She understood the example and apologized. We then got onto the topic of the cousin and explained that, while what cousin did was very wrong, she shouldn't be so hard on her and to stop with the bullying. Our daughter agreed, although she said their friendship was done, and I said that was fair enough. We gave her back her electronics and reduced the grounding to a week. What she did was still wrong and so requires punishment. We next called down our son and talked to him about why he was punished. His mother is his mother and no child, regardless of the reason, has any right to talk to their mother the way he did. Same goes for me. He apologized for what he said and then we talked about schools and if he wanted to change schools. He was genuinely scared that we were going to switch schools and he explained that the bullying wasn't that bad, just some loser kids who were throwing stuff at him and harassing him in the halls. My son is very well liked at his school and has many friends and loves his sports, so we decided not to move school. I did the same with him that I did with my daughter and gave him back his electronics. During the week I got a call from his school that he had been in a fight and was facing suspension, so I went to the school and it turns out he got fed up with the harassment and beat up one of the bullies. The principal was talking serious punishment, but I told him to fuck himself and explained that my son was standing up for himself against people who were using sensitive information to bully him. At the end of the day it was decided that a series of detentions was more appropriate for both people involved, which we accepted as a compromise. I told my son I was proud of him for standing up for himself and that he wouldn't get any punishment at home. As for the whole community finding out, well, it turns out that adults don't tend to believe children when they gossip. Shocking, I know, and all that is known is that my wife and I have a sex tape. So no one cares, or at least no one we care about cares. So we are back to a sort of normal. The kids are talking to us again and eating dinner at the table and we are all a lot calmer, if still a bit tense. In the future we will be a lot more careful about this kind of thing. To address a few things from the last post, yes, the world isn't fair, but why should I then teach my children to contribute to that unfairness? Answer: I shouldn't. Why just punish the kids? What about your punishment? LOL, parenting isn't quid pro quo. The laptop did have a password on it. It was unlocked as I had been using it barely 10 minutes earlier. There is nothing wrong, neither morally nor ethically, with recording a sex tape of consenting adults. People calling me and my wife degenerates can crawl back to whatever sad little hole they crawled out of. Anyway, I won't bother reading any replies to this, so spare me your vitriol. Just wanted you all to know that it worked out fine. Relevant comments about the contents of the tapes? Children_of_the_foxes. Dude, WTF was on that tape? OP replied. Why do people keep asking? It shouldn't matter. Children_of_the_foxes. Of course it fucking matters. What your son saw obviously makes a difference to how he will react to it. OP replied. Of the people on the tape, I am not one of them. Other comments about the tapes? Yan Zakura. He said in the previous post but then deleted it like swinging but not really, and now I'm not on the tape, so maybe his wife is with someone else. Either way, I think there needs to be a lot more empathy and sensitivity shown to the children if this is the case. Saucy Hands. From the sounds of it, it's hot wifing. The son will have lost respect for him. In time he may understand people have kinks, but definitely not in high school and perhaps not until well into adulthood. Final update. Hey, this is me. Saw this when browsing my main account. Crazy to see this post again. It was a tumultuous time. For people calling me a groomer cause my wife gave birth at 18 and I was 23, it was an accidental pregnancy caused by a one-night stand after a night out and she decided to keep it and I supported her. We hadn't met before then, we didn't start dating until later. On the state of the family. It'll disappoint a lot of people to hear this, but things have been just fine. The whole thing blew over and we were back to being a normal family not long afterwards. Oldest is almost finished college, youngest is soon beginning, wife and I are stronger than ever. On the daughter's cousin/best friend. My daughter and her fell out and never quite made up properly, but they're family so they have to see each other sometimes and they seem to be on good terms. As for the rest of us, we forgave her and just moved on. Kids do silly things sometimes and we were just happy to have this whole thing disappear. When asked if the comments were correct about the contents of the tape, I'd like to comment, but TBH, it's funnier to watch the Puritans and sexually repressed people rage about what they're imagining was on that tape than confirm any details. Lol. If you've made it to this point, you're a beast. Don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the channel. As always, see you in the next video.